Hello. Welcome to the inaugural podcast of R&R Showtime. I'm Robert.
And I'm Ryan.
First off, everybody, please bear with us. This is literally the first podcast, and we have one microphone, and we'll probably be dealing with some weird audio stuff. So hopefully it's still enjoyable for everybody. If you hear a cat or a dog, that just might be a thing. So
Yeah.
So the plan for our podcast is we're going to talk about movies and TV shows, and sometimes comparing movies that are alike to each other and kind of seeing what one does well and maybe what one fails at, or we'll just talk about shows and our thoughts on them and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
it was more my idea to do this sort of comparing and contrasting, because that's sort of where I like to begin a place of analysis through a comparative lens, but it's not always going to be a perfect fit. Like, for example, this first one we're doing is on Wandavision. There's not a whole lot to compare it to, because it really is a combination of things. But let's start. I always like to start with first impressions. So we've only watched the first 2 episodes, as those are the only ones that are out so far. So what do you think?
Yeah, so pretty fresh. Friday just came out, this being recorded on a Sunday here. And so I love Marvel. I like all the Marvel movies and have been waiting for a long time to see a new Marvel anything. Literally, I was freaking out that WandaVision was finally coming out. And I was like, gosh, a new Marvel thing. And so maybe I had a little bit of overhype in my mind and didn't measure my expectations as well. But going into it, I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as I would have hoped. But it's really just because it is basically a 50s sitcom to start. Also, by the way, guys, spoilers ahead potentially. We are going to talk about the episode. So if you haven't seen it, you should probably pause now and go watch that. But yeah, it is essentially a 50s sitcom riffing on I Love Lucy and I Dream of Jeannie. There might be some other elements in there. I'm not,
See, I think this is also where it's going to be rough for us, because I personally have like almost no reference level on watching those classic 50s sitcoms other than how they appear in other later sitcoms as through parody and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think maybe it might resonate with some older generations that actually watch those. And I have some reference. I think I've seen some on the old Nick at Night. I mean, me and my brother here are 28 and 26 years old. So, I mean, we were not of the time that really actually watched that, other than, when we stayed up too late and it came on Nickelodeon. So, yeah, so that might be somewhat of a challenge not having that reference, but we can only go by what we know, which I was watching it for the Marvel, and I do have to say I liked what they were trying to do. I mean, I think it's interesting that Disney is trying to enter all these different sort of venues with their shows. They're not just making everything kind of a typical trope with superheroes where it's like, oh, it's action adventure. They're trying to do something different, and I actually kind of appreciate that. But it just didn't, neither of the episodes really hit a particularly excellent note for me. Just because, I just didn't quite feel for them as much. And so, I mean, that's kind of my first impression. Ryan, what did you think?
So I personally love anytime something sort of like any sort of play on something, some sort of I think the word would be like pastiche, maybe, because it's not quite parody. It's not completely making fun of the whole 50s thing, but I do like when things do stuff like that. And also, I didn't watch any of the trailers, though I saw like pictures. I knew what to expect, and I knew to expect that it would be weird. So I went into it with optimistic intentions, and it's pretty much, while it's not what I think I expected, I really loved probably every minute of it watching it. And I think that is partially boosted by the performance of the characters. So let's start with that. What did you think? What do you think of Wanda and Vision? They're sort of the driving force.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I mean, I think that as actors, they're all doing a great job performing. I think we're really seeing it's just such an interesting thing that they're having to do where they are basically acting in a 50s sitcom and they're almost playing out again those tropes in the way that people say things where it's like, oh, ha ha ha, like almost this affected laughing and whatnot, but making it seem somewhat genuine. Like, and I kind of appreciate it. And actually, even just to say, Wanda and Vision, I think the actor and actress are doing great.
Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany.
Yes, correct. Forgive me if I'm not perfect on names of actors every time. Ryan's more the buff. But the other actors, I think, are all doing a pretty excellent job as well.
I think for me, I think the standout supporting actress so far has been, I mean, she just by presence, Catherine Hahn is definitely, which is the neighbor character, the one that comes over and helps with the food.
Yes.
She's sort of a large presence so far. Some of the other neighbors, a lot of them are people that I don't recognize from other things. Another person, but the other one that did stand out to me because I recognize her highly is Deborah Jo Rupp. You may know her as Miss Kitty Foreman from That 70s Show.
Right, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think her performance was just as good as it. I mean, I'm basically watching Kitty Foreman again, except.
But that's kind of what she was. She was a housewife in the 70s, and now she's playing a housewife in the 50s. So it kind of is perfect for that.
But yeah, the neighbor character, Miss Hahn, I thought she was great. That's definitely where I was like, wow, yeah, I think she's almost funny how affected she is. But again, it's part of like what that show's supposed to be, that 50s sort of era sitcom where everybody's just, oh, ha ha ha, this extra laughing, this extra too much almost with their overacting to a degree, but it all seems really appropriate. Yeah, so what I want to talk about is something I do like about the show, and what makes me look forward is the allusions to that. I mean, this isn't all what it seems.
Yes.
We definitely get the endings of the episodes, and in between the episodes where there are moments where there are things sort of indicating that something's wrong or that this isn't normal, that what they're experiencing is not necessarily real. I mean, we know that Wanda is obviously, the Scarlet Witch and she has powers, but we've never seen her in any Marvel incantation or... That's not
iteration.
Right. Iteration, yeah. Sorry, talking about a witch. Got the word mixed up. But we've never seen her have my reality-altering powers quite before, to a degree. I mean, we see her do telepathy. We do see her do mind-affecting effects, but I don't think she's ever manifested new things. And in this show, we're seeing her literally blink things out of existence and remake things. So it alludes to the fact that, again, riff on I Dream of Jeannie, who does have the click, bam, make things happen, make things pop in. But for her to be in a instance where she can do that, which is more than we've seen her do before.
At least within the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know that I'm not well versed on comics, but from what I've heard, Scarlet Witch is one of the more powerful members of the Marvel universe. She's typically pegged with the X-Men, but she is not considered a mutant in this continuity. So
yeah, and again, that makes perfect sense that we might see her power grow. But I mean, yeah, up to this point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we have not seen her and demonstrate those powers. So something we have to think is either pushing her powers to this level, because we have to assume that this is some kind of reality. And a lot of some of the things that you've seen online allude to that she did create some sort of different reality here. This is some sort of alternate reality where she has her powers. I mean, clearly Vision is alive. If we look at the continuity of the MCU right now, Vision is not alive. So this is somewhere where someone that is not alive has been brought back to life, and where she has seemingly infinite control. I mean, we've seen, though it doesn't seem like she has access to that fully or understands it within the context of the show, she definitely, I mean, has been able to make anything she wants basically happen.
Yeah.
So
because I think right now we're left with the impression of whether or not she is in full control, whether or not this is her world that she's created, or if this is something that's been created for her. And it's going to be interesting to try and figure that out. We hear the voice. I don't know if you recognize the voice actor, the voice that was calling out to her. If you haven't, I'm going to try to avoid what could be a potential spoiler. I recognize the voice as a character from another Marvel movie, but they played a very small part in that Marvel movie, so I don't know how they're gonna play into the story going forward. But I'm wondering, did you recognize the voice?
I did not, but I wasn't maybe paying enough attention to notice who the voice actor would be. But it's interesting that you noticed who the voice actor is. Did you confirm it? Did you look that up afterwards?
The issue is that I had gone onto the Wikipedia page to see some of the cast list, and that sort of spoiled that character was in there. And I knew I read the actor and I knew who he was in another Marvel movie where he played a smaller role, and so he may be a surprise to some to show up, but we are going to see more of him, obviously, because he's trying to call out to Wanda.
Yeah, so not only that, we obviously see that there's that somebody's insinuating that who's doing this to you, but we have the allusion to these almost little commercials within the episode. Now, the first one was for a toaster, right? And I didn't see anything too wrong there, except for there was a moment where the toaster just kept blinking. And then we see them look at each other like what's going on or something's amiss. But I didn't see anything else about the toaster itself that seemed too strange, other than it seemed like a very odd object in and of itself.
Notably, it was produced by Stark Industries.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be one thing. So we see that this continuity has some sort of connection, obviously, to the real world. Stark is involved. But then we see that the next commercial is for a watch, and it was made by Hydra, and it's Strucker brand. So again, that makes us think, I mean, is Stark and Strucker involved? Is this just some sort of something? I mean, if this is from Wanda's imagination, is it just drawing from her subconscious deeply and just adding things to the world? So certainly questions to be asked there. I mean, it kind of throws us for a loop that we see both. So we can't say, oh, it's obviously Hydra or it's obviously something Stark related. So those are some questions to ask, I think.
Yeah. So let's get into the episodes themselves. So first episode, we see Wanda and Vision have just moved in to their home in this neighborhood, and they take a look at the calendar and see that there's something on the date, and they're not sure what it is, and confusion, shenanigans ensue. We eventually find out that this is a dinner date with Vision's boss and wife to try and impress him. And if this goes wrong, he could lose his job. And but Wanda thinks that it may be some special night for them, and so
their anniversary, I think. Yeah, Catherine Hahn, I believe, her character comes in and says, "Oh, of course it's your anniversary, right?" She just sort of lies and makes that up, and so that becomes a thing. It clashes at night when the boss shows up, but Wanda's prepared for a sexy night in the house, and shows up with candles lit and dim lights and everything.
Classic comedy. I think I find a lot of that funny. Again, I really like Deborah Jo Rupp, her just sort of like doubting wife that just sort of like goes with what's going on, but like also I just love her. I just like to see her. So whatever she's doing, I'm just gonna be kind of happy watching it. And it's just genuinely just funny to watch it. Everything going on until they get to the kitchen table and we see the first sign of something being not just off, because we're clearly this isn't the real world, but like things get weird.
Yeah. So are we talking about during the dinner or during the kitchen?
During the dinner.
Oh yeah. So during the dinner. Yeah. So again, spoilers. During the dinner, the boss begins to choke on something, chicken, whatever it is. He begins to choke and he sits there and he's choking. And Deborah Jo Rupp, her character, just sits there and says, stop joking, where she's almost in a repeat. She can't stop saying it. Stop it.
Yeah.
But nobody does anything. Vision is looking at Wanda. It's just a strange, tense moment. He like falls to the ground, is dying. And then Wanda finally says, Vision, do something.
Yeah.
And then he uses his power to pull it out. And we think, okay, so now they know the secret, something's going to happen. And they just get up and say everything was okay and they leave.
Yeah. Like it's as if the show went off script for a moment, and you can see like Wanda and Vision confused, and then Wanda just needs to take control. This is more where I feel indicated that Wanda is sort of in control, or because it kind of goes on to her. She's the one that, while she doesn't take it out herself, she tells Vision to do it.
Yeah. So it's within, I mean, why didn't Vision get up? Why didn't he do anything? One thing, so the fact that she maybe is controlling these things, manifesting, making them happen, I come back to, really, I'm looking at Vision in both episodes, and Vision, this highly logical, literal android, cyborg, robot, whatever. I believe it'd be android because he was constructed, but with a near human consciousness, artificial intelligence. We never see him exhibit any of the simplicities of human-like life. I mean, he's just he is an android. I mean, he has like a nearly perfect artificial intelligence mind. And so everything he does is very logical or reasonable. And so his actions here are, again, a little more humanized. And I think that lends to the idea that Wanda is maybe idealizing him a little bit, changing. I mean, obviously he's fitting in this 50 stereotype, almost 50 sitcom stereotype. So he's actually being forced more to be like that. And he does exhibit, oh, I'm a robot, I don't have to eat, or I'm so this and that. He says those things, but the way he's actually acting aren't like that.
And I like the running gag at his work where he's trying to figure out what it is that they do and he can't figure it out. If he really is Vision and he's all knowing, he should be able to understand what it is. And the joke is that it's so convoluted that even he doesn't understand it. But like, it's funny as a joke, but you're right. Like, if he is Vision, then it shouldn't be, he shouldn't be so confused by it as he is. Now I want to get more into that point, but
I wanted to say, one, I don't think Vision's supposed to be all knowing. I don't really know exactly all the metrics of his powers, but and my thought was not that it's so convoluted what he does, it's that there is no point to their work.
Yeah,
is kind of the joke, is that like they just compute things and there isn't actually a point to what they compute.
Yeah, it's a joke we've seen done before, and I think it's elevated by the fact that Vision is so smart, and he's just like, what?
Yeah.
But so I want to get more into his humanization in the second episode, because there we see a lot more of it. From the very beginning of the episode, where we see them in their two separated 50 style beds, and a noise is heard at the window, and they don't know what it is. It's so spooky, so scary. And until it's revealed that it was probably just the wind, just a tree branch, at least at first.
Yeah, and it seems almost, again, it just seems a lot. Again, Vision, there's no reason that Vision, literally a man made of vibranium, ultra intelligent, can phase through walls and fire lasers out of his forehead. Maybe he can't anymore. We don't know if it's different without the Mind Stone. But nonetheless, a superhuman or greater than is afraid of a potential noise outside his house. I mean, again, we're seeing a Vision that's essentially idealized for this 50 sitcom. Like, he is 50 sitcom Vision. So he's not, I mean, even if he has powers and he's a robot, it's not really the Vision we're seeing almost.
Yeah, I definitely get the impression that Wanda is sort of has this self-awareness that even Vision doesn't have, that no one else really has, because maybe that's me putting it on her character, but I just sort of feel like she's always more aware than anyone else is in a lot of the situations, and is so much so that she's the one that handles the noise. And then the next morning when she goes outside and finds a little
colored helicopter.
Yeah, up to this point, the show's entirely in black and white. And
we see that the symbol on it is one that's been alluded to already in, I believe, after credits of, what was it? Spider-Man Far From Home, I think, when we see Fury in a alternate, some sort of computer-generated room thing on a beach, but then he's constructing what we believe from the comics to be SWORD, which is the essentially the new equivalent of S.H.I.E.L.D., except it's a planetary, it's involved more out externally of the world, knowing that we moved into the MCU where the threats to the Earth are now not earthly, but greater than earthly. And that helicopter had the symbol of sword on it, which was something I had noticed.
See, that's not something that I had noticed, but I ask if you noticed between episode 1 and episode 2. I'm wondering if you noticed their house. I think it's a different house between the first and second episode.
You know, I thought so, but what I also noticed is that Wanda's dress, the way that she's dressed, was a little more. I don't think it was, because in the first episode she was dressed in, I believe, a dress, and it was very 50s. But the new dress was almost like it seems like she skipped 10 years. I mean, pants on a woman. I don't think that was very typical in the 50s.
It's very called into question, like throughout the episode, people noticing what she's wearing.
Yeah, and she's even doubting about her wearing it, and it's certainly. I mean, and once we again hopping to the end of the episode, things end up changing the color. We see that it's a red pantsuit.
Yeah,
you're thinking, that's pretty progressive for the 50s. I think we're skipping forward already a little bit. So really interesting.
But yeah, I do believe that the house is a different house, because we notice in the first episode those sort of blinders that they're able to play jokes of blocking off the kitchen, the side of the kitchen with. And in the second episode, when we see the house, they're just not there, and just the layout just looks different. It's perhaps getting into, this is not I Love Lucy anymore. This is more like a I don't know, maybe something we don't even recognize. Yeah, like I want to say like Leave It to Beaver, but I've never watched that. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, we might be seeing might already be seeing, even from episode 1 to episode 2, this transition. And we already know, maybe Ryan hasn't watched the trailers for WandaVision, but I've seen the trailers, and we know that it's going to transfer between the years. So we're already seeing that now. I think we're already seeing this kind of time skip, slow progression forward in time.
But so the plot of this episode, I didn't really finish it off. There's this sort of Wanda and Vision are separated into their female clique and the male clique, and they eventually come back together for this talent show. But at this point, Vision has gotten what is essentially drunk. Yeah. In a way that only Vision the robot can, by, swallowing a piece of gum.
Yeah, which gummed up the gears, I guess.
And again, this is where we really play into, this isn't how it would work, obviously. So is this a fake Vision that is idealized by Wanda, where Wanda thinks, oh, if Vision can hear him, if Vision gets gummed up in the works, then in Wanda's mind, that's how he gets all loopy and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely kind of even had a problem with that. I was like, again, ultra super strong artificial intelligence android swallows a piece of gum, and now he's drunk. He's like exactly basically what he's doing. He's being and it just, again, for the context of the show, it's fine. I get it. I understand. But to me, I'm just like, I question this entirely. Like, this seems silly. And I think that's the point, is that we're not in media and in movies, TV shows, there is supposed to be an element of suspension of disbelief. You want to put away that, things aren't real, and believe what's happening, in a sense, to let the story go on. But I think some of these things are almost meant to take us out of it. They're meant to keep us going, like, this doesn't seem right, somewhat. Like, we're following the story here, but I think everybody understands, like, all of this doesn't seem right. All of this seems...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, very clearly, like, from the beginning of this, we're not supposed to take any of this at full face value, but yeah, it just goes to show, like, but Wanda still hasn't really been notably affected by any sort of wacky TV logic. She still sort of follows a sort of she feels more self-aware of everything, and she's the one where we see the scene with the radio calling out to her. She's the one that it's calling out her name, and she's aware of it, and the other character is aware of it until it's not.
Until she's not. And then the other character also just ignores it. She just lets it go, and the whole situation, I mean, Wanda was in a sort of aggressive, combative situation with this head of the planning committee for the community talent show that they're going to be in later in the episode. And this starts happening, and the woman doesn't know what's going on with the radio. She seems to be flabbergasted by it. And eventually it just shorts out. And I think to myself, I'm like, did Wanda short it out, or did it just short out? Was it breaking the reality too much and the whole thing couldn't even sustain it? As this man's calling out to her, Wanda, who's doing this to you? We're hearing this, who's doing this to you? So, I mean, this gives us the idea somebody's doing it to her. But again, there's a thought, like, I think that she's in control of this somehow.
Yeah.
So
I think that's where I'm leaning towards, because as we see in their magic show, like you said, I think this is where we get the real display of her, like, a reality distorting powers, like, in full flex, because every little thing she does, like, there's a level of turning a piano into a piece of cardboard, making ropes appear from nowhere. We saw a taste of that in the first episode with the dinner and the kitchen stuff, but
see, in the dinner in the kitchen, she was really just levitating things, which we know that the Scarlet Witch can do. We've seen her levitate things, so that seems very within her powers. But
I think the notable one was her cooking chicken and then turning it back into eggs. That was the big I didn't know she could do that. And then in this episode, again, just making things apparate, shaking a person from one place to another. All in all, it's just kind of leaves you to wonder what this means.
Yeah, no, definitely. Again, in that second episode, getting back to it, we just see her, anything she wants, it just appears and it just happens. She literally makes a human appear in the talent show. There's a box, and he's supposed to make Wanda disappear inside the box, but Wanda, to fix the issue, she makes a human, Geraldine, I believe is the name of the character in the show.
I think so.
Appear inside the box. So she can literally manifest humans in this world to change and move.
Yeah.
Which is significant. I mean, we can say, oh, inanimate objects, that's one thing, but maybe no control. But to say that you can transpose humans, again, even takes it to another level, because there's sometimes a barrier between organic life for things that have sentience.
But then we get the final display of her power towards the end of the episode, as we see something truly unusual. A person. Do you want to take this, or? Well,
yeah. So towards the end of the episode, her and Vision, I mean, we have a couple strange things that occur in the final moments after they've concluded the talent show and they got through it, and everybody loved it. Everybody loves the talent show, and great, you guys did a great job, and it was so good. And they win a show for comedy, or a trophy for comedy. But they get home and they hear something outside, and they go attempt to attend to it, and they see it, and it's literally a manhole cover being moved. And what comes out of the manhole cover is a beekeeper.
Yeah, I mean,
bees buzzing around them. I mean, I almost appreciate how random it seems, because it just seems so totally out of place, and you're just like, what is this?
And maybe this is the beekeeper, a deep cut Marvel character who's always been the Scarlet Witch's arch nemesis. But I mean, that's a leap, but we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Now, I'm sure that it's setting it up for something later in the series where we're going to get to see a POV of the beekeeper coming out, and it's literally some regular guy, and he was like, I'm invading, he moved through some reality things, and he went into a bee suit right before he finally got to Wanda's reality or something.
I mean, yeah, we don't know what it is, but then Wanda, seeing this happen, she's just like no, and just takes us back, rewinds time.
Yeah, the whole situation's crazy. The rewind just exhibits, again, her being able to just she has such good control over this world that she can literally rewind it. Again, not just popping it back, but rewinding back in time. And then once we get rewound back, we get to the point. I mean, not only does she rewind things, but apparently she just manifests the whole world to become color now.
Yes. So yeah, she just decides, let's take it this direction. No beekeeper, yes, color.
Yeah. So, and now, even more than either of those almost, is she makes herself pregnant.
Yes, we saw at the beginning of the episode Wanda and Vision get a little frisky, but of course that's not how fast a baby pops up. She didn't have it like a just minutes, seconds before, and now it's there.
Yeah, I mean, even if in the earlier part of episode they did, make some whoopee, ha ha ha. We know that she has a full belly. We're talking 6 months pregnant, sort of thing. So, and again, even if they made it that morning, either she made a baby out of nowhere, or she at least accelerated the growth of a baby by 6 months. Which, I mean, I guess she has time powers, so that's potentially real. But
so I'm not sure if it's 6 months, but I'm not a pregnancy expert. But yeah. So, and I think I've heard before that Wanda Envision's child is a character that exists. I'm not familiar with the character specifically, but it is something that exists within the Marvel universe.
Yes, and so I have read a couple things before, and I'll kind of just touch into this. If people don't want to hear about references of the comics that could be potential spoilers, maybe skip over this or don't listen to this part. But so I believe that the idea is that they're drawing from a comic series or event called the House of M, which does deal with mutants. But it's something about how Scarlet Witch goes insane and she creates a reality where I don't know if all mutants die or every superheroes die, or basically it's pretty crazy. She doesn't create an alternate reality where she changes things, and in that reality, she does essentially create her own children. And I believe that they are twins. She has 2 children. I don't remember what their powers are. Don't remember what their names are, but I do recall this, and I think seeing references to WandaVision and shows like Wisecrack or New Rock Stars on YouTube. Shout out to both of them, referencing those comics and how they are drawing from them and what we're maybe going to see in this show. I'm everything I think they've been saying about this potentially being something to do with that seems to make sense.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, so I think we've gotten to the end of the episode. So again, you said you were a bit underwhelmed, but you're willing to see where it takes you. I'm kind of loving it quite a bit. I was kind of sad that it was only 2 episodes we got, but I'm excited for episode 3. I believe that's where a lot of like the online reviewers were given all 3 episodes. So, and from anything that I've tried to avoid reviews, but it most of what I've heard is that it's weird, and it's already been weird, but I'm ready for it to get weirder.
All right, yeah. And again, I would like to say, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's all very well put together, and for what it is, it's good. But what I'm wanting from Marvel is a little more of the action. I want to see a little more of the superhero things. And honestly, what I am, though, even if I didn't quite love these first 2 episodes, I like what it's setting up. I like what the little allusions to all this outside stuff going on, that there's a guy at a console. We didn't even reference this, that there's a guy at a console watching these videos of this episode. It's something that a person, like what we can assume a real person or in our reality is viewing. They're viewing this stuff happen to Wanda. So she's manifesting it in some alternate reality, we can assume, and Lily letting someone else is viewing it. They're picking up on this reality. So I'm really interested to see where it goes. I mean, I am excited. I think it's going to definitely be interesting.
The bottom line is MCU phase 4, it's getting weird. It's becoming, they realize that they could get away with a lot of weird stuff in the first 3 phases. Like 10 years ago, nobody was gonna go watch Guardians of the Galaxy. They gave us 2 of them with Mary Poppins jokes and all.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
So yeah. And so we're seeing WandaVision, and I believe that it's going to play into the next Doctor Strange movie. I believe I have heard before.
Yeah, Multiverse of Madness, which again, I mean, if we're already having some reality breaking stuff with her.
Not to mention Spider-Man, that's going to be out there with old cast coming back. But again, just speculating here. Final notes on WandaVision. It's great. Disney Plus in general, we haven't gotten a lot of these big budget shows yet. In fact, I think this is really the second one after Mandalorian. And comparing this to the Mandalorian's a little rough, because Mandalorian sort of...
It's in my humble opinion, the best piece of Star Wars content made. And not to make any light of the original movies, but I mean, for what it is today, how good the story is, that's just, I mean, again, that's a whole different episode right there, but it's amazing.
So does WandaVision live up to Mandalorian? Not yet, but it has room to be something of that caliber, in my opinion.
I will say, I don't know if it's ever going to match The Mandalorian. I don't, just based on what it is, I think it's going to be great and interesting on its own, but I don't think it's going to be something to be held up to The Mandalorian.
You don't think her kid's going to pop out like little Grogu?
Oh, Lord. Well, yeah. Hey, one little random...
You don't think Pedro Pascal's behind the beekeeper mask?
Oh, my God. Now we're bringing it... Now you're just making me afraid that it's going to turn into a Wonder Woman 1984 here. Talking about Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal, great. Love the actor. Amazing. But, yeah. Again, Wonder Woman 1984, that's a whole nother episode right there. So...
Yeah, it is.
Hey, one thing I always thought was interesting, right? Is that so we know that the Maximovs, both Wanda and her brother Pietro, their powers were actually drawn from the Mind Stone because they used the scepter, Loki's scepter, which had the Mind Stone within it, to draw that power to sort of make their powers. But I think it's interesting that you see that the Scarlet Witch, obviously she's Scarlet, her powers are red, and maybe this is how the character is, but if you look at the Reality Stone is red, and some of the things that we see her do, she does do the mind affecting, and we see that exhibited in Avengers Age of Ultron, but the mind doesn't necessarily do telekinesis. I mean, you can say it's from her mind, and the idea that her red scarlet powers are maybe affecting reality, maybe is there some kind of connection there between Reality Stone and...
So, yeah, there's questions to be had there. Honestly, the continuity of which Infinity Stone went where and did what, it gets a little confusing. In my opinion, like which one was in Loki's staff, which one was in.
I can confirm for sure the Mind Stone was in Loki's staff.
No, but I mean, like, what did she get her powers from Loki's staff or from the
Tesseract?
Yeah, I don't remember.
No, because the Tesseract at the time of Avengers Age of Ultron is secure on Asgard. Yeah, because Loki ends up getting it because he steals it from the vault in Asgard. But Loki's scepter was lost, and Strucker had hold of it and was using it to power weapons and things. And that's what they used to experiment on. They drew the power that was in it. So again, you see some of the stuff in the MCU. It doesn't always track perfectly. Like, oh, the Mind Stone can only give mind powers. Apparently, it can give more than that. The Tesseract is a space stone, so it should be only for portals. But they just make ultra melt weapons out of it in Captain America and other instances. So
yeah, so it's harnessing a power so great that it does what it needs to do. Basically, Scarlet Witch was already a character with established powers, and they made it match. Like, because Quicksilver, you could say the mind doesn't give you silvery speed.
I don't see why it should give him those powers at all. But again, we can just they're drawing on some sort of something there. I mean, and there's probably an explanation maybe, but that's all beyond this right now. So,
but yeah, so
I mean, yeah, I think that was great. And I think we'll close it out here today. Thanks for anybody that decided to listen to our first podcast. I hope it was decent. We're hoping to make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks again, everyone.
See you next time.
Yeah. See you next time from R&R.